Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Engines of the ATG Railroad. And today we are going to be taking a look at the P42AC, a AC version of the P42DC. Anyways, before we get into the locomotive, let's talk about the ATG Railroad. The ATG Railroad is based off of Amtrak and they are in a different dimension. They are a commuter, intercity, and long-distance passenger train operator living in somewhere all around another dimension version of the United States. But we'll talk more about that later. From now, let's talk about their history before we can get into the locomotive, the P42AC. The ATG Railroad began its operations in 2001, and it mainly had 3 trains. The first train was the Hawker Valley Limited, traveling between Washington, D.C. and Vancouver, B.C. Its equipment are 2 P42ACs, a Superliner baggage car, and many Superliner cars. The next train is the Pacific Beach Liner, a intercity train traveling between San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo, California. Its equipment are mainly ex-Metro Gallery cars that dated back to the 1950s that they have acquired from the Music City Star when they were retired. They had 5 coaches and 3 cab cars. The coach numbers were 500, 501, 502, 503, and 504. The cab car names are 400, 401, and 402. Trains are usually led by ex-Amtrak F40PH locomotives. And last but not least, their third main train is called the Mountain Limited, traveling between Los Angeles, California, and Washington, D.C. Their main equipment are F40PH locomotives that they acquired from Via Rail Canada, and Bud rail cars also from Via that date back to the 1950s. A Bud RDC is used as the final car, and it's used for the trip back to Los Angeles. And now that we covered all of the 3 main trains used on the ATG Railroad, let's take a look at the locomotive. When the ATG Railroad began their operations in another dimension in 2001, they needed a locomotive to start off with their operations, and they needed a locomotive with alternating current traction motors for long-distance trains. That's when they made a deal with General Electric to make what would be called the P42AC, which was like the P42DC, but with alternating current traction motors for better performance and reliability. They also had a higher top speed of 125 miles per hour and met the EPA Tier 3 emission standards. The ATG Railroad put it in order on 21 units numbered 9600 through 9620. The first unit went into service on July of 2002 and began service right after it was delivered. The final unit, 9620, went into service on August of 2003. When all of the P42AC locomotives went into service, they would be used on all of the trains. Whenever it would be used for long-distance trains, intercity trains, or some other types of trains, the P42AC has it all. It is the success of the ATG Railroad and remains in service until something tragic happened with them. They were suffering from a lot of issues and as of that, needed to be sent back to the shops for some repairs. As a result of these failing issues, some intercity and long-distance trains would be late, all because of the failing P42ACs. Over the years, the issues of the P42ACs started to get worse and worse, that if they continued to have more issues, they would be retired and scrapped for good. By 2011, all of the P42AC locomotives finally had their issues fixed, and they were no longer seen with any issues. The P42ACs worked on every train with pride, reliability, and nothing else. They were all proud of themselves for not having any issues. However, by 2011, they were reaching 10 years of age, and needed to be refurbished straight away, and that's what they did. In 2017, all of the P42AC locomotives have been completely refurbished, receiving brand new controls, and that's it. They all returned back to service by 2019 and 2020. However, by 2021, they were reaching 20 years of age and were due for a complete replacement. In 2023, they made a deal with Siemens Mobility for 5 ALC-42 locomotives to replace all 21 of the P42AC locomotives. When all 5 ALC-42s went into the picture, the P42ACs would begin to be phased out. They would be retired and sold off to other units that needed P42AC locomotives, and some of them have been scrapped to be used as part sources to expand the fleet. However, only one unit was preserved, being 9600, that would be in the original paint scheme that it came with when it was delivered. The rest of the P42AC locomotives that were not preserved or sold off to other units were then sold off to the scrapper's torch to be used as part sources. However, the good news was that only 2 locomotives were preserved, and they would be used as backup locomotives just in case if a train breaks down. The P42AC had a great life. However, most of its issues would come to its fate. It will always be remembered in the history book of the ATG Railroad, the other dimension's favorite railroad.